This is the European History Lecture for Tuesday, the 5th of October, 2021. And we are doing Renaissance items and people of interest. And we covered the poisoning Borgias, the Italian mercenary Condottieri, the Medici family, the Habsburgs, the most powerful family in early modern Europe, with Charles V and his son Philip II. We talked about the Habsburg lip, the Holy Inquisition in Spain and outside of Spain. We talked about the Hussites, linear perspective, the Ottoman Empire.
We didn't talk about linear.
We skipped over a bunch of stuff that you said.
Well, we did, but no, linear perspective is what I taught you on Friday.
Yeah.
It's where you have points on the thing and all of your lines converge there. We skipped pragmatic sanction of Bourges. We skipped sack of Rome. We're going to do those today. The Ottoman Empire, which is the most powerful of the countries in this part of the world, much more powerful even than Spain, at least in the near run. Suleiman the Magnificent with his giant oniony turban, and the sieges of Vienna in 1529 and 1683. I also made reference to the expulsion of the Spanish Jews, and I'm going to do that today.
Oh, the winged huskies?
Yep, that was part of the invasion of Vienna in 1683. The nation of Spain is a creation of the marriage of Queen Ferdinand, Queen Isabella, and King Ferdinand. Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile marry. They drive, they also get control of Navarre. They drive the Moors out of Granada. The only thing that's left, not as part of Spain, is Portugal. But Spain in specific, and Iberia in general, has been this mixing ground, this melting pot of peoples and cultures and religions. For 800 years, Moors have been in Spain. They bring their culture, their advanced technology. The Spaniards have Celt-Iberians, and they have Visigoths. And now they have various kinds of North African, Berbers and Arabs. And all of this tends to come together as an expression of triumph and an attempt to unify Spain is something more than a simple marriage alliance. Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand take the opportunity to not only get rid of the Moors, but the same year they get rid of the Moors, they are going to expel the Jews. Now, Jews have been in Spain since Roman times. And remember, before the Pope changes the rules on usury, the Jews serve an important economic function as moneylenders, as bankers. But when the Catholic Church changes its stance on that, the Jews are no longer as necessary. Christian bankers can come in and take their place. Still, Jews tend to occupy positions in the skilled trades and in the merchant community that help the economy work. Jews tend to be wealthy. So, the Jews of Spain are given a choice. Leave and take a limited amount of your property, the rest of which will be going to the king and queen, or stay and become Roman Catholic. A number chose to leave, and they ended up in Eastern Europe, in Poland, Belarus, Ukraine, and Western Russia, what will later be known as the Russian Pale. Some of them go back to Palestine and live under Ottoman rule. Many stay, and they convert to Christianity. But the Inquisition is there to make sure that these conversions are more than pro forma, that they are real. And so there is much torturing and spying and betraying between the Jews that stay in Spain and say they're Christian now, and the Holy Inquisition in Spain, the Spanish Inquisition, that wants to make sure. So that's the expulsion of Jews. Pre-modern slavery. There are Americans who actually think that the only slavery in human history is the Africans in the old American South that were brought in to grow tobacco and cotton. This is nonsense. I have said before, and I will say again, every agricultural society on earth before the age of industry had some form of slavery. Sometimes their slaves were called serfs. Sometimes they were called peasants, peons, and tenant farmers. But they are stuck on the land with limited legal rights, growing food for everyone else. So who were the slaves in Europe before they go to Africa? Well, they were mostly Eastern Europeans. Slav, the slave race of Europe, at least in Germany and France, tended to be Eastern Europeans that were bought and sold and brought into Western Europe. Sometimes it was a result of defeat in war. That type of slavery goes back to Roman times. But often the slave race of Europe is blonde-haired, blue-eyed, pale-skinned from Eastern Europe. Now, did these slaves lead the kind of lives that black slaves led in the antebellum South in the late 17 and early 1800s in places like South Carolina and Georgia? No. Sometimes the slaves were stuck doing work in the mines, which is a horrific way to make a living. Sometimes they worked in the fields. Sometimes they worked in houses. And they could often buy their way to freedom. So slavery in the late Middle Ages existed in Europe like it existed in Asia, in the Americas, and everywhere else you had farming. But it was a less distinct break between what kind of person is a slave and what kind of person is free, because basically they looked like other Europeans. Whereas blacks from Africa don't look like Europeans. And what needed to happen in the United States before slavery was abolished in the Civil War was that an African who was free had to carry his papers always. His manumission papers, his papers stating that he was a free man. And there were many free men who lived in the South and who lived in the North who had found a way to buy their freedom. This happened in Europe as well. So, before we go into other things, any questions on slavery or any of the other things we've covered? Okay. The pragmatic sanction of Bourges, as well as Sacrosancta and Essarabili, all relate to the concept of conciliarism. Conciliarism is the belief that church councils have more legitimacy and authority than popes. So, Sacrosancta is a Holy Roman Empire document that argues that there should be church councils regularly and that the Pope should refer all important decisions to them. So Sacrosancta is pro-conciliar in the Holy Roman Empire. Sacrosancta is pro-conciliarism in the Holy Roman Empire. Now we come to the pragmatic sanction of Bourges, where French King Charles VII determines to support a church council every 10 years. French King Charles VII proposes a church council every decade so that the popes are not going to ever just run away with power again. Instead, there's going to be like a church congress that meets. Pragmatic sanction of Bourges. Finally, Essarabili. Essarabili is a papal bull that says, no, we are not going to do any of this. Christ himself says to St. Peter, Peter, Rocky, you are the rock upon which I will build my church. Peter, Rocky, that's what Peter means. You are the rock upon which I will build my church. Peter is the first person to recognize Christ as the Son of God. He is the first Christian. And as he gets older, he goes to Rome and becomes the leader of the Christians in the heart of the world capital. He is killed by Nero during the persecutions after the Great Fire of AD 66. Since then, the Bishop of Rome has had a special authority because they are the successors to St. Peter. They wear the shoes of the fishermen, so to speak. The Roman Catholic Church is not going to become run by a committee. There is a place for church councils, but that is not the place of the Pope. The Pope is the vicar of Christ on earth. This is church doctrine. He has a unique teaching authority and a unique authority to keep the church for God rather than for France or Germany or any other place. So Essarabili settles this. The church is not going to entertain any more conciliar notions. Remember, conciliarism became big not only because some people wanted to overthrow the power of the popes, but also because it took a church council, actually a couple of them, to solve the problem of the Great Schism, where there were 8 different people saying, I'm Pope, and the other 7 are anti-Pope and anti-Christ. So a couple of church councils were necessary to solve that, and people got the idea, well, we can do church councils for other things. No. Yes?
Oh yeah, what you're talking about Peter.
Yeah.
So my dad and I were talking about this last night about how, but everybody most of the people who wrote like the New Testament and even like the Old Testament, obviously, they were all Jewish.
Yep.
And so we were talking about how it's like messed up that people can say. I mean, obviously there were Christian Nazis, but like the fact is that the whole Bible that we use as God's word is Jewish, and our Lord and Savior is Jewish. So
Jesus,
how call a Christian a Nazi?
No, it is, but what they always said is that Jesus was actually the half-son of a Roman, that the Jews mistook his words in the New Testament. This is what the Nazis said. They basically tried to recast Jesus Christ as an Aryan. And it was twisted then, and it is twisted now. Jesus himself was called rabbi, which is the Jewish word for a religious teacher. And there are times in Jesus' younger ministry where, I'm trying to remember an event, a woman comes to him and says, Master, I know that if you say so, I will be healed. And Jesus says, one doesn't let one's children starve to feed the dogs. And this was a statement about one doesn't let he's there for the Jewish people at this point. And you are a Gentile, you're not a Jew. So one does not let his people starve to feed the dogs. I am not going to, and I'm sure I'm slightly misquoting this, and I know it, but I think I have the right idea. And if any of you know the story better, you're welcome to say it. But then she goes on and she says, but Master, I know, I believe that if you say it, it will be so. And he took pity on her and healed her. And as time goes on, the message of Jesus, even in the Bible, becomes that of universal salvation, rather than merely a reform of the Jewish faith. So there are some interesting steps. That's an interesting topic. But yeah, you and your dad historically are right, and it's one of the weirder things about Nazism. Okay. I think we have covered all of these. So now we're going to go into a visual. Please close the shades and turn off the lights and stuff. Like you, I am carrying a lot of extra. Okay, so in your notes, I'm going to leave the thing running for now. In your notes, you will notice Filippo Brunelleschi and Il Duomo in Florence. And you will see actually a picture of that on the picture pages. Now, Brunelleschi, Filippo Brunelleschi and Il Duomo. Il Duomo means the dome. Now, why are domes such a big deal? Because rocks are heavy. And you are making a structure out of rocks. And it is a structure of arches. A normal post and lintel door has 2 posts and a crossbeam atop. That's the lintel. An arch, instead of having a lintel, has a series of stones placed in such a way and cut in such a way that they are all falling towards the center at the same time, and they lock into place that way. And if you trust your engineer and trust your stonemason, the arch is actually as strong or stronger than a post and lintel door. A dome is a 3-dimensional arch. Arch, 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 in all 3 dimensions. So to make a dome is an even more challenging task when you are working with brick and rocks. So, the first great dome in this case is the Pantheon, built in the time of the Emperor Hadrian in Rome. And the Pantheon is this domed building in Rome. It has an oculus Dei, which is an opening at the top of the dome to let in light, and it was a temple to all the gods, thus Pantheos, Pantheon. Then there was the Cathedral of the Hagia Sophia. Hagia Sophia is the cathedral in Constantinople, today Istanbul, which was built in the time of the Emperor Justinian, after the fall of Western Empire, when the Byzantine Empire was flourishing. And it has a series of arches, little ones, that support a series of bigger arches, that support a series of quasi-domes, that support a massive dome at the top. And one of the reasons why the Russians accept Orthodox Christianity is because of the sheer majesty of this building. So there is a tangible desire in the West, in North Italy, to show we're back. And so, in Florence, Filippo Brunelleschi is contracted and agrees to build this church dome, which is massive. It's the biggest dome built in Europe since Hagia Sophia. But you will notice that it's not a pure dome. First off, the base is not round. It is octagonal. So you got side, 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 and there are 4 other sides. And so with these straight sides, you can work the brick differently or the stone differently than if you were working in a pure rounded dome. Secondly, you will notice these ribs. These ribs reinforce the dome structure, making it even stronger. Third, atop it, the dome does not meet with a capstone. There is this circle, and above the circle, above the open space, is this little tabernacle, which has the cross over the orb, which represents the world, and light comes in without letting the rain in. Il Duomo is a masterpiece, but it is also a compromise, in the sense that it is not a purely semi-spherical dome. It is the first bit of architecture that denotes Renaissance. Now, we're now going to go to a later dome, Donato Bramante's St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome. Now, Bramante is the Pope's architect and chief artistic advisor. He designs this cathedral. Michelangelo, however, designs the plaza, the colonnade, and the obelisk that is the heart of the approaches to St. Peter's, and it's where the crowds gather when a new pope is declared and when the pope comes and makes a speech or whatever. So you will see in St. Peter's a bigger dome than Il Duomo. But again, it is many-sided with these ribs to make the structure stronger. Now there are windows here, and smaller ones here, and this little tabernacle up top also lets in light. St. Peter's, and it's hard to see in this image, is massive. But again, you see the development of the dome as an expression of imperial power and the majesty of God and the triumph of a resurgent European civilization. Almost as if there's a rebirth of some kind happening. Next, I don't see any hands. If there are hands, you gotta let me know by saying, "Excuse me, Mr. You're not having your hand up." Besides, what if I don't want to call it? Just ignore you. Okay. Now we are going to Leonardo, the first of the Ninja Turtles, Da Vinci. And, yeah, there's a picture of him. That's not him. That's the Mona Lisa. And we're going to start with some of his designs. Okay.
Oh, the tank.
So this,
hurts.
I'm going to explain it to you. Goobers. So, here we have an early design for a tank. Now, Da Vinci understands that the problem in battle is that your soldiers are vulnerable to being killed. So what if you make a cart? And around that cart, you've got a lower work structure. And then on top of that lower work structure, you put some bronze sheeting. And you have a turret up here atop that you can peek out and shoot out through. You can also have gun ports in the lower bit, so you can have your muskets here, and you can have your scouts here, and it can just roll along. So, theoretically, you should be able to cross a battlefield without too much problem. Can anyone point out a difficulty in this idea that Da Vinci ultimately encountered? What could go wrong? Yeah.
It's designed to go on perfectly flat ground.
Yes, if you had concrete floors to every battlefield, this might actually, and it was perfectly flat, this actually might work. But in mud or normal dirt, it sinks. Anything to add?
Oh, if it goes down a hill, it's just gonna.
Yeah. Well, it might, if it stays, if you're lucky, it'll stay on its wheels. But everyone will have to jump up in it, and it'll go because inertia. There's a third problem. Anyone have that? Yes.
How do you move it?
Yeah, that's the problem. That's the real problem. Even if you had perfect space, human beings are not. Even if you fill this area with human beings, we're not strong enough. If you fill it with oxen, there's no room for your soldiers, and it's going to move super slow. And even then, I don't know if the oxen can push it.
You could do it like one of those little takes cars where they go. Whee!
Yeah, well, that's sort of the Flintstones cars. It's the same thing. The problem is this is too heavy to do that with. It really is. So, unfortunately or fortunately, the tank, the land ironclad, the armored land warship, will have to wait until we develop the internal combustion and diesel engines in World War I. In World War I, somebody gets the idea to combine the American tractor with an armored vehicle, and that's where the first tanks come from that are practical, that actually work. So Da Vinci has his tank idea, but it's impractical. But that's not his only grand but impractical idea.
Helicopter?
Shh. Reading ahead.
No, it's actually before the thing.
Okay.
Wow.
So here,
That looks like a fun slide.
Peabody and Sherman.
well, you just don't touch the moving parts. Okay. So here, you have the screw principle at work. Now, screws do function. In fact, aircraft and watercraft in the age of motor power all employ screws. In ancient times, there was the Archimedean screw, which was a way of moving water uphill. You basically use an Archimedean screw, and it moves water uphill. It's an amazing invention. And I believe that was perfected at the Library of Alexandria. So Da Vinci applies this principle to aeronautics and comes up with the idea of placing a guy here and having sort of like a bicycle arrangement where he pedals and inevitably you'll catch the air and you'll go up. What are the problems with this that we can point out? I'll look for somebody who hasn't said anything yet, just to see. Okay, Alexandra?
How do you steer it?
Well, yeah, if you're up there, what you do is you lean. And you sort of lean.
That's reliable.
Yeah.
If you have a seizure, like,
Well, then you.
like genuinely help you off the floor.
How do you get back down?
You slow down. Like a normal helicopter does.
Okay, but like,
Imagine just like not
I feel like there'd be a point where the screw would just stop moving and
And
you
any
just
Okay.
tricks
plummet.
or anything?
Sam,
One person is not enough
you think?
to live fire.
Yeah. Unless you're talking about, I don't know, the Flash, you're not going to be able to have the leg power to even turn this massive screw. Also, something that we learned in the 20th century. This is a broad-bladed screw, much more similar to a maritime screw, which is used in ships to catch the water, thicker medium. Aeronautical screws, like on propeller planes, are much thinner. Windmills in the modern era are much thinner than that. That's why helicopter blades look different than this. The biggest problem is the same as the tank. You don't have an engine powerful enough and light enough to power this thing. So it's not going to work. Still, it's a brilliant idea. And Da Vinci gets credit for the idea of using a screw to get up in the air and move around. Now, let's look at probably his most famous painting, although it's not my favorite.
Mona Lisa.
It's only famous because it was
She was a
stolen.
brat.
Okay, that's not it.
Who stole
No,
it?
I heard this from
Three random guys. It's like a
She's
painting
so
that big.
That is
She's like,
Okay. So here's Mona Lisa. What's weird is, and I've never been to Paris, but those people who have, the entire painting is about the size of her face in this picture. It's not big. It's very small. Now, there are all sorts of legends that surround Leonardo da Vinci that say this is a feminine version of his face. It looks a little like it, but no. What is it about this painting that sticks with you? Well, what art historians say is it's her smile and the look in her eyes, the enigmatic Mona Lisa smile. What does that mean? Is she planning to knife you to death?
Yes.
Is she planning to, hoping that the guy she likes will ask her out? Does she have indigestion? We don't know. But we do know that her smile is unusual enough and that Da Vinci does capture something on paint which is very, very special. Yeah.
Did he just forget the eyebrows or what?
Fashion. You know that eyebrows come and go for women. Sometimes they're in fashion. Sometimes they get plucked. Sometimes they get plucked and then you draw them on, which is the weird thing to me. I don't understand that. If you're going to do that, just leave them. Also, that's that. I think it was a fashion thing at the time. Yeah.
So the painting's really old. Maybe there were eyebrows, but they just came off at the time.
Not with that.
Yeah, nice try. But you can see how the painting is old enough to crack. And there have been restorations done, but it still does this. Because I don't remember if it must be on canvas, but it's in any case small.
The Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I can't get over that smile.
And then there was this big
It's gonna haunt you.
That's really just so cute. Why can't I spell it?
Oh, this one.
You can practice.
Okay.
Okay. Actually, no, before I do that, there's another drawing that I want you to see.
No, they found it.
And then I go next.
It's like they sent out so many things.
Okay. If the Renaissance has a logo, it's this. This is the Vitruvian Man.
Hello.
Fine, that'll do. The Vitruvian Man is a study in proportions. If you ever take an art course that has you working with drawing people, you will know that proportions are kind of important. For example, there's a very famous statue of the Emperor Augustus with a little baby cherub clinging to his leg, and that cherub is Rome. And he's got his arm stretched out, and you can put a pole in his hand. But that arm, if you brought it down, would go below his knee. The sculpture is wonderful, but the proportions of the arm are gorilla-like. Knowing the proper proportions helps you to reliably draw a human face, or a human body, or human hands. So Da Vinci is doing that, but he's also working mystically. That if you have a square described by the height of a man and the breadth of his arms, and then if he were to do a variant of jumping jacks, what you would see is there is a sphere, or not a sphere, a circle, that also matches up to it. Now, the people of that time who were, like Da Vinci, trying to explore how reality worked, gave credence to the Platonic idea, Plato idea, of the harmony of the spheres and perfect forms, geometry as a key to unlocking the universe. So the Vitruvian Man explores that. But if you ever want to see, if you see this is some reference to the Renaissance or the awakening of human potential, the outspreading of the power of man to imagine and reshape the world. It means all sorts of things. Questions, comments, thoughts? I see none. Okay. Now, we go to probably my favorite painting of Da Vinci, which is Last Supper. Now, this painting has a bunch of stories attached to it, and we're going to explore them. First off, Da Vinci is contracted by, I believe they are the Carmelite order of monks who have a monastery atop Monte Cassino, in the south of Italy, in Italy near Naples, south of Rome. And they want Da Vinci to paint this in their cafeteria. Because monks, when they eat, don't talk. They either eat in silence, contemplating and praying, or they eat while listening to a monk reading from Scripture. What could be more appropriate than a scene of our Lord feasting with his apostles and disciples right over the door to the kitchen? So Da Vinci is going to paint this as a fresco. He starts out by painting Jesus. Here's one of the stories. So he has to find the most beautiful of men. A man who is strong without being effeminate. A man who is wise while still being a man of action. He needs to find a face that is lordly and humble, loving and stern, all at the same time. And he finds this. He finds a model, and the model sits for him. And he paints Jesus. Years go by as the painting is being painted. Other things come and go. Da Vinci comes and goes. He comes back. And slowly, he fills in the other apostles and the disciples. Years later, at the end of his journey, he's ready to paint Judas Iscariot, the betrayer of Christ, the man who sells Christ to the Sanhedrin, to the Jewish priests, for 30 pieces of silver, 30 denarii. And for Judas, he needs a face that is dissipated by the excesses of life. Too much drink, too much of everything. You're besotted, you're drunk. Sex to the point where you cannot love anymore. Sensation to the point where nothing matters anymore. Everything is just sort of dull because you've done everything, smoked everything, drank everything, ate everything, and there's no more joy in life to be found. This is, by the way, what happens to children who get famous in Hollywood. Children and teenagers are so wealthy that they fill their lives with people who will not say no to them. And so unless you're very careful by your age or by age 18, there's nothing mysterious about life anymore. They've bought everything that a person could possibly want and a bunch more. And a lot of them are destroyed by it. So what Da Vinci is looking for is a destroyed face. And in the streets, he stumbles over this drunk, prematurely aged. Remember to sign it. Prematurely aged, and with all of the marks of dissipation and excess and decadence. And he invited this guy to sit for him in return for money. And the guy follows him, and he sits for him. When Da Vinci is done, he says, "Fine, you can go." And the guy says, "Thank you, master. It's a pleasure working with you again." Again? I don't recall ever working with you. Years ago, before my life changed, I sat. You painted me. The same model. When he's young, still healthy. When he is older and has ruined his life. The same guy. Evidence of what a misspent life can do. Class? So that is one of the more interesting stories about this. Another thing that happens at Monte Cassino in World War II is that the Nazis fortify it. The Americans land in Naples, the Italians surrender, the Nazis take over Italy, and now the British and the American and Canadian forces are fighting their way through the Italian mountains northward towards Rome. An attack goes up Monte Cassino and is slaughtered. The commander says, "Don't want to destroy this landmark to human history, if I can help it." He orders another set of attacks to go up the mountain. They're slaughtered. Finally, it becomes clear that he needs to take the gloves off. So he orders B-17 bombers and B-24 bombers to flatten the place. As wonderful as the art is, it's not worth the lives of my soldiers. And his soldiers very much appreciated that attitude. So American bombers flatten the monastery atop Monte Cassino, which actually makes the Germans' job easier in that they now have rubble to fight from, and since they were hidden underground in bunkers and basements, they were fine. So it's still a slaughterhouse. Miracle of miracles, when we retake it, aside from some bomb damage and a few machine gun holes, this wall that holds this painting and this doorway underneath is one of the only parts of the monastery not to have been destroyed. So the rest of the monastery is rebuilt around this wall and around this painting, and there it is to this day. And they repair the bomb damage and restore the painting and repair the machine gun holes and all the rest. But to me, I've always thought that that was an interesting story. Okay. Now, we're going to begin. Well, actually, before we begin with Leonardo, with Michelangelo, we're going to do Raphael. Another Ninja Turtle. School of Athens. Okay. Why am I hearing your voice?
Because Jackson's judging.
Judge her harsh. Okay.
Got it.
So here is Raphael's famous School of Athens, painted into a rather beautiful barrel vault in one of the papal buildings. Let's look more closely. So in this mythicized Athens, you see people in Renaissance garb, people in helmets that really never existed outside of an opera. But these are the great thinkers: Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Archimedes, Eratosthenes, Galen. No, not Galen. Maybe Galen. All gathering and talking and listening to one another, expostulate as to the meaning of life. And this, I think, is supposed to be Raphael. Could be wrong. But all of these people represent particular ancients. And it is also like the works of Leonardo that I've shown you, and like the works of Michelangelo that I will be showing you. This is in fresco. Fresh plaster, oil egg-based paint, painted into, not onto the wall. You'll be expected to recognize the School of Athens. Although the Athenians never had buildings like this. This is late Rome. Yes, this is the School of Athens. Remember the arch, that'll help you. Okay. Now we go into language. Okay, the David is one of the masterworks of this sculptor. David is huge. A human being watching it would come up to his calves or his ankles. You can see pictures of people around. So David is this massive figure. And you can look at the muscles, the articulated knees, everything. Yeah. And he's got abs. But he's a young man. He's a youth. He's a ute. David is depicted at the moment where he decides he's going to fight Goliath. So he is young, and he is desperate. And he is hoping that God will find a way through this. So the look on his face is both bellicose, warlike, and worshipful, and focused. So he's about to take his sling and let loose at the armored giant coming at him. Massive statue of David. And yes, human beings have body parts. And being a sculptor, you capture the body parts. So, yeah, we're dealing with nudes here. That's okay. Let's see.
Can I say something?
What?
I have a little pin, like one that you pin to your shirt,
Yep.
and it has a bowl of noodles on it, and it says "send nudes," like noodles. It's so
Oh
funny.
God, that's awful.
Okay.
That is awful. Okay. I think actually what I'll do is I'll stop here. Yeah, how much time do we have?
We have.
We don't have that much time. So, okay.
Jackson's on burger.
We will stop here. Can somebody turn the lights on, please?
You guys should see Jackson at work.
Really?
Alexandra.
So in the painting School of Athens,
Yes.
if you zoom in on like the right column of the art, you can see Raphael's face like peeking out from
Oh,
behind
okay, that was him.
Yeah,
Then maybe the guy at the bottom was supposed to be Michelangelo, because he knew Michelangelo. I don't want to shoot it. I don't have it in your notes.
What?
Okay, I'm going to open it up again and take a look. No, that sounds right. I knew he was in there somewhere. Okay, peeking around.
Oh no.
Can you come over here?
Yeah.
Thanks.
You win.
Yeah.
So here we are near the right side. That him there? That's great. Thank you. Fabulous.
I'm going back to the notes. I kind of hate them, like, most of the assignments I get it, and I can do it on my own.
Folks, shh. I predict to you, tomorrow we're going to finish with these images, and we're going to finish with other incidental notes. Your quiz, which will be on everything we've done so far, particularly the Renaissance and the geography, will either be at the end of class tomorrow, or it'll be the beginning of class on Thursday. I have not decided yet. So be aware that tomorrow or Thursday you'll have to know your stuff. The quiz will be on the geography, the list of important people, and on also the lists of the important events, as well as being able to identify the art drawings that I've shown you and that I will show you. So tomorrow end of class or Thursday beginning of class. Okay, you can talk among yourselves. Thank you.
Because I was trying to